Now we take you back to September 11th, 2012, and just what was said by whom in the wake of the attacks that killed 4 Americans, including the U.S. Ambassador, Chris Stevens.
Today, without a single American casualty, Muammar Gaddafi is gone and the people of Libya are free.
Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat and Osama bin Laden is dead.
September 6th, 2012. Soon-to-be Secretary of State John Kerry and President Obama speak at the 2012 Democratic National Convention. But less than a week after these boasts, on the anniversary of 9/11, disaster struck in Libya. At 5 p.m. Eastern Time comes the first wire reports of a raid on the U.S. mission in Benghazi. The attacks would last some 7 hours, and before it was done, they'd claim the lives of 4 Americans, including Ambassador Chris Stevens. 8 p.m. Deputy Chief of Station Gregory Hicks in Tripoli talks by telephone to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. He tells her that the American facility in Benghazi is under attack. That night, he told another State Department official that those attacks were conducted by the local al-Qaeda franchise, Ansar al-Sharia, which might have captured the U.S. ambassador. 10 p.m. After talking with Hicks, Clinton updates President Obama.
I spoke with President Obama later in the evening to bring him up to date, to hear his perspective.
Shortly afterwards, Clinton puts out a statement on the Benghazi attack, which includes the following, quote, "Some have sought to justify this vicious behavior as a response to inflammatory material posted on the internet. The United States deplores any intentional effort to denigrate the religious beliefs of others." September 12th, the Rose Garden. While the president does refer in a general way to acts of terror, he seems to be embracing the belief that the 4 Americans were killed in a spontaneous riot over an anti-Muslim video.
Since our founding, the United States has been a nation that respects all faiths. We reject all efforts to denigrate the religious beliefs of others.
That afternoon, the president leaves for a campaign trip and fundraiser in Las Vegas. The death of an American ambassador as the Arab Spring threatens to turn into an autumn of discontent, all right in the middle of a presidential campaign. September 13th, Secretary of State Clinton again suggests the attack was a spontaneous demonstration.
There is no justification, none at all, for responding to this video with violence.
White House Press Secretary Jay Carney says so flat out the next day.
These protests were in reaction to a video. We have no information to suggest that it was a pre-planned attack.
And later that day, when the President and Secretary of State greet the deceased at Joint Base Andrews, Clinton again talks about the video.
We've seen rage and violence directed at American embassies over an awful internet video that we had nothing to do with.
Charles Woods, the father of one of the dead, says Clinton turned to him and made a promise.
She mentioned that thing about we're going to have that person arrested and prosecuted that did the video.
Meanwhile, White House advisor Ben Rhodes composes an email. The subject? Prep call with Susan. It's sent to, among others, senior political advisors David Plouffe and Dan Pfeiffer, and Press Secretary Jay Carney. Secretary of State Clinton had decided not to appear on the Sunday talk shows, and this memo is apparently the White House strategy for her replacement, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Susan Rice. One stated goal in the emails is to, quote, underscore that these protests are rooted in an internet video and not a broader failure of policy. Another, quote, to reinforce the president and administration's strength and steadiness in dealing with difficult challenges. To worldwide media attention, California authorities haul Nikula Vasily Nikula, the man who produced the now infamous YouTube video, in for questioning.
Do you have any regrets?
September 16th, Susan Rice goes on 5 Sunday talk shows, repeating the same story each time.
What happened initially was that it was a spontaneous reaction to what had just transpired in Cairo as a consequence of the video.
On the same day, the president of Libya's General National Congress appears on Face the Nation and says the Benghazi attacks were anything but spontaneous.
It was planned, definitely it was planned by foreigners.
September 17th.
An intelligence source on the ground in Libya tells Fox there was no protest and the attacks were not spontaneous, the intelligence source said, adding the Libyan attack was planned and had nothing to do with the moving.
September 18th, the president appears on the David Letterman show, and his story is starting to shift. President Obama says the video did spark Muslim outrage, which terrorists then exploited to attack and kill Ambassador Stevens.
You had a video that was released by somebody who lives here, sort of a shadowy character. This caused great offense in much of the Muslim world, but what also happened was extremists and terrorists used this as an excuse to attack a variety of our embassies, including the consulate in Libya.
September 19th, Capitol Hill. The head of the National Counterterrorism Center testifies before Congress and plainly states what many now suspect.
I would say yes. They were killed in the course of a terrorist attack on our embassy.
September 20th.
It is, I think, self-evident that what happened in Benghazi was a terrorist attack.
September 21st.
What happened in Benghazi was a terrorist attack.
September 27th. Nakula Basili Nakula is arrested for probation violations. The court determines he's a danger to society and a flight risk. He's held incommunicado. October 16th. Benghazi comes up in the second presidential debate.
It took the president 14 days before he called the attack in Benghazi an act of terror.
Get the transcript.
He did, in fact, sir. So let me call it an act of terror.
Can you say that a little louder, Candy?
November 6th, President Obama is re-elected. November 7th, Nakula Basili Nakula appears in court and is sentenced to a year in federal prison. Much has been said about what the military could or should have done during the attacks. We examine that when we return.